The night my family decided I wasn't worth the drive. I was trapped inside a crushed Toyota Camry, bleeding into my own lap on the side of Route 15. Black ice. That's all it took. 1 second. I was driving through the Pennsylvania mountains. After a brutal double shift at the hospital, exhausted but determined to make it home for Thanksgiving dinner. The radio was playing softly. My coffee had gone cold an hour earlier. I remember rubbing my eyes at a stoplight and promising myself I'd sleep the entire weekend once I got to my parents' house. Then my rear tires hit black ice. The car spun so fast I didn't even have time to scream. Metal slammed against guardrail. Glass exploded across my face. The steering wheel crushed into my ribs. With a sickening crack, and then there was silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind that comes after violence. The kind where your brain realizes something inside your body just broke badly enough that you might never stand up again. I remember the taste of blood filling my mouth, cold air rushing through the shattered window, the dashboard lights flickering like they were struggling to stay alive too. Then darkness. The surgeons later told me my spleen had ruptured on impact. 4 ribs were broken. Internal bleeding nearly killed me before the ambulance even reached the trauma center. They operated for 6 hours. 6 hours. Where my life balanced somewhere between recoverable and fatal while doctors cut me open trying to stop the bleeding. And during all 6 of those hours, our family stayed home eating Thanksgiving dinner. I woke up 20 hours later in a hospital recovery room under fluorescent lights. So harsh they made everything feel unreal. My throat burned from the breathing tube they'd removed. Every breath stabbed through my ribs like broken glass. There was a drainage tube in my side and 4 lines in both arms. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was the empty chair beside my bed. No flowers, no jacket draped over the seat, no half-finished coffee from a worried parent. No text messages, no missed calls, nothing, just a whiteboard hanging beside my bed with 1 sentence. Written in dry erase marker under family contact status, family notified. Declined to come. At first, I thought there had been some mistake. Maybe they hadn't reached my mother. Maybe she was driving. Maybe my father was parking downstairs. But around noon, the charge nurse came into my room to check my vitals. And I knew immediately something was wrong. Her name was Dana, mid-50s, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. I'd worked around nurses long enough to recognize the expression she wore when someone was about to deliver bad news carefully. She adjusted my morphine drip. Then she sat down on the edge of my bed. That's never a good sign. Your family knows you're here, she said softly. I waited. Dana looked down at my chart first, instead of at me. Told me everything before she even spoke again. I called your mother around 6 this morning after surgery. My ribs hurt too badly to move much, but I remember turning my head toward her anyway. What did she say? Dana hesitated, not because she didn't know, because she was trying to decide how much damage the truth would do. Finally, she exhaled quietly. She said they'd come if things got worse. I stared at her. There are moments in life where your brain refuses to process words because accepting them would permanently change how you see people. This was one of those moments. What exactly did she say? I asked again. Dana looked me directly in the eyes this time. She said, "We'll come if she dies." I think part of me stopped loving my mother right there. Not dramatically. Not all at once, just quietly. Like a light switching off in a room nobody had entered in years. The strange thing is, I didn't cry. I'm a pediatric ICU nurse. Spent nearly a decade watching families break apart inside hospital rooms. I've held parents together while their children coded. I've seen grief so raw it changes the temperature of a room. So instead of crying, my brain did what it always does. It started organizing information. My mother chose Thanksgiving dinner over her daughter's emergency surgery. That was the fact on facts. Don't care how badly you wish they were. It's different. But there was another fact nobody could explain. My hospital bill had already been paid. Completely. Surgery, trauma care. ICU, recovery. Medication. Everything. Over $80,000 erased before I even woke up. On my second day in recovery, a patient services clerk named Lorraine walked into my room, carrying a rectangular package wrapped in brown paper and tied with white kitchen string. The package looked old-fashioned, almost handmade. "A gentleman dropped this off for you yesterday," she explained. "Who?" She checked her clipboard. "Older man, tall black wool jacket." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. "He also paid your hospital bill." I blinked at her. "My what?" "Paid in full," she repeated, casually, like she was telling me someone brought flowers instead of wiping out a medical debt larger than most people's yearly salary. Then she handed me the box. It smelled faintly of cedar. Real cedar. Warm and familiar and strangely comforting. There was a message, Lorraine added before leaving. I looked up. "He said not to open it until you got home." That box sat unopened beside my hospital bed for 2 days. And during those 2 days, nobody from my family came to visit me. Not my mother, not my father, not my sister Megan. The only person who showed up was my coworker Renata, an ER nurse who drove 45 minutes after her shift just to take me home because she knew nobody else would. She brought me a turkey sandwich and pretended not to notice I'd spent Thanksgiving alone. That's the thing about hospital people. We know when silence is kinder than questions. The first phone call from my family came 3 days after surgery. Not to ask if I was okay, not to apologize, but because my grandfather had died, Walter Brewster, a man I hadn't spoken to in 16 years, at least. That's what I thought. The call came from an estate attorney named Daniel Frost. His office was in Dunmore, the same town where my grandfather used to live before my mother erased him from our lives. "Your grandfather passed away 3 weeks ago," Frost told me calmly over the phone. 3 weeks, 3 weeks my family knew Walter was dead and never bothered telling me. Then, Frost said something that made me stare at the cedar box sitting unopened on my kitchen counter. He asked me to mention the package. Every nerve in my body went cold. Frost asked me to meet him in person, so 3 days later, ribs wrapped and still bruised yellow across my chest. I drove to his office. The moment I walked in and saw the black wool jacket hanging behind his office door, I knew he was the man from the hospital, the man who paid my bill, the man my grandfather trusted. And sitting on Frost's desk between us was a stack of documents that completely destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. Walter Brewster had never abandoned me. My mother made sure I never knew he was trying to stay for 16 years. My grandfather wrote me one letter every single year. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, updates about his life, questions about mine. The first few letters had been mailed. My mother intercepted every single one. Returned to sender. Unopened. After that, Walter stopped mailing them. But he never stopped writing. 16 letters sat inside that cedar box, one for every year he lost with me, and underneath them was proof. He'd secretly funded 2 years of my nursing school through a scholarship trust under another name. $40,000, paid quietly, without recognition, without conditions. I thought I earned that scholarship from a random committee. It was him. All those years, I thought nobody believed in me. My grandfather had been standing quietly in the background, making sure I never fell. Then Frost showed me the photograph, my nursing school. Graduation, rows of folding chairs, students in blue gowns, parents taking pictures, and in the last row near the exit stood an older man in a black wool jacket watching me with his hands folded in front of him. Walter. He was there. He came to my graduation and never approached because he knew my mother had spent 16 years convincing me he was dangerous. I broke then, not loudly, just silently, because there's something devastating about realizing you were loved deeply the entire time you believed you were unwanted. And suddenly, every lonely holiday, every unanswered birthday, Every moment I told myself I simply mattered less. Looked different, my grandfather knew. He saw it all, the way my mother treated Megan like the golden child while I became background furniture in my own family. The way I got seated with the younger cousins at holidays while Megan sat beside my parents. The way my mother introduced me to neighbors as our other one, 16 years earlier. Walter finally called it out during Thanksgiving dinner. One question: why does Judy always eat with the children? That single sentence destroyed everything because my mother could tolerate cruelty, but she could not tolerate being witnessed. So she rewrote the story. She told relatives Walter was unstable, controlling, senile, and slowly. Everyone accepted it, even me, until the night I nearly died, because after my family learned Walter left his estate entirely to me, suddenly they remembered I existed. Again, my mother started calling nonstop. My sister texted about family unity. Father apologized. Halfway before losing his nerve, and then came the invitation family dinner. Saturday night. Everyone attending. They wanted reconciliation. What they really wanted was money. So I went. Not for revenge, for truth. I walked into my parents' dining room carrying the cedar box and 16 years of evidence my mother never expected anyone to see. The table looked perfect. White tablecloth. Good. China, candles lit. My mother smiling like nothing ugly had ever happened inside those walls. And for the first 20 minutes, she performed beautifully. Warm voice, tearful apologies, talk about family healing. Then she finally brought up my grandfather's estate. And that's when I opened the box. I laid the letters across the table one by one. 16 years of proof. Then I placed my hospital chart beside them and I read the nurse's note aloud in front of everyone. Mother stated, "We will come if she dies." Room went dead silent. Not dramatic. Silence. Funeral silence. The kind where everyone realizes they've been believing the wrong person for years. My mother tried denying it at first, then crying, then anger, then blame. But facts are stubborn things, and for the first time in 16 years, she couldn't control the story anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't insult her. I simply stood up and said, "You said you'd come if I died. I lived. We're done." Then I walked out. A few months later, I used my grandfather's estate to create the Walter Brewster Fund for First Generation nursing students who grew up without support. Systems behind them, students who understand what it feels like to achieve everything alone. Students who need someone quietly standing in the last row, believing in them, because that's what Walter gave me. Not money. Not revenge. Something infinitely more valuable. Proof that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently in the background for years, until the exact moment you finally realize you needed it all along.